Okay, welcome to anybody that's joined me. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built up a multi-exposure image in Photoshop. You'll see the image in the middle here is probably recognisable by you. And I want to show you how this was built up in Photoshop to give you an idea of the layers that were used. This is actually quite an easy one, so we can go through this quite quickly. But we're going to start by switching off the layers down the right hand side here in the layers panel in Photoshop. And you can see that I started with two images, these two here, this one and this one. And the second image, which is this one, has been overlaid onto the first image using the screen option in the blend modes. These are called blend modes here, and we can go to normal and we can choose different blend modes. I'm not going to go through what all the various blend modes do. We can leave that for another video. But you'll see here I started with these two images and I've created this blend mode, the screen blend mode for this, because this will give me a nice soft look to the image, showing some of that second layer through, but making that background layer just fade away a little bit. And the third layer, which is the third image, which is the main image that sits on top, is the image of the leaves overlaid onto the two other images. Now I could have just left it like that, but I like to quite sometimes add a few texture layers onto some of these images. And also that this layer here has actually been turned on its side. It was actually a portrait image, but it's been turned on its side because I liked the way that it stretched out the leaves and the branches looking as if they were reaching out into the image. And you'll see if we look down these layers here on the right that they're actually, most of these layers are either texture layers or some kind of colouring layer like colour lookup and hue saturation layers, and I'll go into those as we go along. So the first layer and the first overlay of texture, I used what's called this Coffee Shop Interland Floral, and there's a set of free textures you can download from a site called the Coffee Shop, and I'll put the links to those layers into one of the postings afterwards, so you can maybe download some of those textures and have a play with them. I do create quite a lot of textures of my own, but in this case I've used some of those. I've used two different sources of textures in this one, and I'll show you some others later. The third layer is what's called a colour lookup table, and if you're using Photoshop quite regularly, you may or may not have come across these, but if we go up to the adjustments layers here, you can see that there's an option here, a little box with squares, a little grid box called colour lookup, and you can actually use the colour lookup tables to apply colour onto an image, but it can sometimes also produce some contrast to the layer as well. And it's one of those things in Photoshop that you've really got to have a play about with. Often what I'll do with colour lookups is I will apply them. I'll just get rid of that one I've just put on. I'll apply them, but then I might reduce the opacity, and I might build the layers up 2 or 3 layers at a time of colour lookup tables. And again, it just comes down to look and feel and how you feel about the image and what you want to say in the image. But I'll often put a colour lookup layer onto an image, see what it looks like. So there's colour lookup layers, and get these up here. The next 2 layers are just texture layers, and these 2 layers I've used using the, if we go to this thing here, there's a thing called Adobe Paper Texture Pro, and you can find that on the Adobe site. And again, that's another one I'll put in with the links in, and these are free texture layers that you can add into your Photoshop desktop, and I'll show you how to get to them. So I've got one layer here which you can see has got almost like a centre grungy layer with an outer I suppose like a vignette style. It's just darkened on the outside. Some of these are pretty grungy layers, so you can have a bit of fun with those. And if we switch that on and off, you'll see that's just applied a little bit of lightness and colour to that. The next layer is quite a grungy layer, and this is where we start to get some the look and feel that I was looking for. And this is a real grunge feel to it, this layer. And I've applied, just by way of showing you the, just go back a layer there. This layer that I've applied, I've reduced the opacity here to 28. If we pop the opacity up, you'll see it's got a bit of a brown colour. So I brought that down to 28. And this upper layer, and I think it's got, sorry, keep jumping back. And I've used the hue blend mode on that. If we go to normal on that, you'll see it's slightly different. Again, these are just things you try, play about with, have a little go and see what they look like. So we'll go to this other layer, which is the grungy layer, and that's at 100% opacity, but I've applied it as a hard light layer. And if we look at that, you'll see the effect that a hard light can have on it. It accentuates the outer darkness. And I'm not going to go through what all of these blend layers do in this video, because I just wanted to show you how this image was built up. But it's worthwhile looking, I'll find a source for you to show you what all the different blend layers do, because they can have quite a big effect on your image, and it's worth knowing what they'll do so that you can almost sort of work out what effects you're going to get with them. And then the final layer was just a hue saturation layer, and we've just picked that from up here. You can pick the hue saturation icon up at the top, same as the colour balance, and all these are just shortcuts to the various options. And if we switch that on and off, you'll see all I've done with that is I've basically added some saturation, a little bit of saturation to the red, accentuated the red in the leaves just to make them stand out. And that's the final image. That's the whole of the image, and that's quite an easy one. So it's something you can play about with and have a try, get a couple of images, get an idea of sort of the look and feel you want to get, and go start playing about with textures. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I didn't go too fast. And if there's any questions, you can ask me some questions in the group, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.